What's up guys, Houndish here, and today we're going to talk about 10 absolutely awesome legendary weapons in the season of the Seraph. And these are totally worth going after in the game right now, as we have a lot of very strong weapons available, many of them in new archetypes or with wild trait combos available. Especially for PvE content, we've got stuff with Volt Shot and Incandescent, but others that can be set up really nicely in builds this season. So we'll focus on both the more powerful weapons, but also some more unique stuff, which may give you guys a bit of an idea of some weapons to chase down. But as always, we can't cover every weapon in Season 19, so there are bound to be some weapons that you think should be on the list, but aren't. So definitely let us know in the comment section which weapons you've been enjoying. But otherwise, in no particular order, let's get into some of the best weapons this season, and if you guys enjoy the video, a like rating and comment below really help us out. But starting off for today, we have the returning Ikelos SMG. Of course, super low hanging fruit, this is one of the best weapons right now. And of course, it's an old favourite. We know players have mixed feelings about reprised weapons and reskins, but it's hard to be mad at this one with how good it is, as one of the best all-around weapons in the game right now. So it can be acquired through this season's activities, and also focused at the Seraph frame, making it relatively easy to acquire red borders compared to deep sight weapons of the past. And the main attraction for now on the weapon is the fact that it can roll Volt Shot, which we know is super strong, and reloading the weapon after defeating a target overcharges it for a short time, causing it to jolt on its next hit. We are going to touch on this perk a couple of times today, of course, but it's really strong because when we proc Volt Shot and then hit a target, the jolt that it applies to them will also chain to nearby enemies on successive hits, as well as increasing single target DPS. So that in itself is really good, but looking at the popular roles for the Ikelos SMG, most players are pairing this with Feeding Frenzy in the first slot because it allows for very rapid reloads, which we always want with Volt Shot. And especially paired with art classes, the reloads here can be lightning fast. But also given that the stats for the Ikelos SMG are really good, it's a hugely capable weapon and we're just chewing through mobs here. Although other popular bonuses on the Ikelos SMG include Perpetual Motion, Threat Detector, and Dynamic Sway Reduction in the first trait slot, with options of Frenzy, Rangefinder, and Surrounded in the second slot. Although I would say Feeding Frenzy and Volt Shot is without a doubt the strongest role on this weapon. But it also gets the Rasputin's Arsenal origin trait, and breaking a target's shield will partially reload the weapon's magazine. So let us know if you've been rocking the Ikelos SMG down below. But another really fun weapon from this season is the Wilderflight, and this is a new type of special ammo launcher from Tex Mechanica, coming with intrinsic double fire with hard-hitting twin fire rounds. And we can see here it actually fires its rounds in parallel alongside each other, so it's an interesting archetype, and I feel like having the projectiles together kind of improves the ease of use of the weapon. And of course the weapon drops in the Spire of the Watcher dungeon, and may make it a little bit less easy to acquire if you aren't into dungeons, but it can roll some pretty interesting stuff. And looking at popular roles in the first trait slot, Auto-Loading Holster, Demolitionist, Repulsor Brace, and Feeding Frenzy are often slotted. Then in the second perk slot, Vorpal Weapon, Frenzy, Disruption Break, and Adrenaline Junkie are quite common as well. But you can lean into ability-focused combos, so things like Demolitionist, where kills generate grenade energy, and then Pugilist, where kills generate melee energy. And if you take advantage of those grenades and melees, especially with some of the Void Warlock setups, it can be a lot of fun. So while this isn't the absolute best weapon this season necessarily, it's definitely different and also performs pretty well in a bunch of ways. Of course, as well, it also has the Text Balance stock origin trait, and damaging targets while firing from the hip increases handling, reload speed, and movement speed while aiming down sights. So let us know any good rolls on this weapon that you've been using. And right here, back to Ikelos weapons for a moment, the Ikelos shotgun has also returned, and like the SMG, it's pretty easy to acquire and to get red borders of for crafting. And the main new perk for the shotgun is Incandescent, so it's one of a couple of shotguns that can get the bonus. And it can make some pretty tasty pairings with that perk, so in the first trait slot, it can roll Subsistence, which will reload the magazine from reserves as we defeat targets. Plus it can get Threat Detector, which buffs reloads, stability, and handling when enemies are in close proximity, which they more or less will always be with a shotgun. And then it can get Feeding Frenzy as well, and each of these is pretty good for keeping those incandescent rounds coming, especially Subsistence. But another fun option if you're rocking a melee-focused build, like this Warlock with Celestial Fire, would be to rock Pugilist and Incandescent. And the Scourge kills will proc Pugilist, which grants a ton of melee energy as you can see right here. And so we're getting a couple of melees off between shotgun kills, and then that energy is returning nice and quickly, allowing us to keep scorching targets and sniping them down with this melee. However, if you aren't interested in incandescent, the Ikelos shotgun can also roll 1-2 punch and trench barrel, which are two of the good old melee shotgun bonuses, which are really solid options. So it's a great weapon to upgrade this season. Looking at new season weapons though, Tripwire Canary is a great one for fans of bows to check out. Once again, it's earned through season activities and the Seraph frame vendor, so it's also a craftable weapon. And this is a lightweight frame bow with arc damage. And it also gets the Ambush Origin trait, which improves range, handling, and damage against combatants during the opening moments of an engagement. And there are some classic perk combos here, like Dragonfly and Explosive Head, which is really fun. Plus we can see it rolls Archer's Tempo and Rapid Hit in the first trait slot. And then the second trait slot has options of Frenzy and Successful Warm-Up as well. But here we have a roll with Dragonfly and Frenzy, which is really solid because we get the precision explosions as well as a damage boost of 15% from Frenzy, which is more or less always active in combat. And as an all-around weapon, it's really strong, but again, being arc damage, we can take advantage of Amplified, Spark of Amplitude, and Ionic Traces as well as Arc Wells to really round this weapon into a build, which is supporting ability energy and survivability. Plus it's always fun to see all of those enemies explode, so definitely another weapon to look out for. The fifth weapon we're looking at right here though has to be Path of Least Resistance. This is a new arc trace rifle in an adaptive frame, and the first trace rifle that can roll Volt Shot. So again, that's pretty awesome, and it's a season activity and craftable weapon for season 19, once again with the Ambush Origin trait. And obviously Volt Shot is self-explanatory, allowing us to jolt targets after a kill, and we're just chaining multiple kills back to back with Arc Lightning. But on this particular roll, we have stats for all as well as Volt Shot, and when we hit 3 separate targets, we get increased weapon handling, stability, reload, and range for a moderate duration. But the good thing is that Volt Shot chained kills will activate that perk, so it's more or less always up and providing a pretty big boost to weapon performance, including reload speed, which is important as it helps us get Volt Shot going. But if you also pick the Omolon Fluid Dynamics Origin trait, the reloads here are lightning fast. Other popular perk rolls though in the first slot include Triple Tap and Subsistence, although we must point out that the automatic magazine reloads won't proc Volt Shot. We always have to do that manually, so they're not the best to pair with Volt Shot in particular, but it can also get dynamic sway reduction and adaptive munitions in the first slot, with the second trait slot able to get Volt Shot once again, but also Dragonfly, which is pretty good, and then things like One for All and Tap the Trigger. Personally though, I feel like Stats for All and Volt Shot is incredibly strong and not to be slept on. Yet another Volt Shot weapon this season though is the Terminus Horizon machine gun, and this is an arc high impact frame machine gun from the Spire of the Watcher dungeon as a random drop. Popular traits in the first slot include things like Triple Tap, Demolitionist, Dragonfly, and Rapid Hit, but then that can be paired in the second slot with stuff like Volt Shot, as well as Target Lock, which is a new bonus that increases the weapon's damage the longer it remains on a target. Plus it can get Adrenaline Junkie and Cascade Point. I've got a roll on the machine gun right here with Triple Tap as well as Target Lock. And I'd say Target Lock is the next best thing alongside Volt Shot. It isn't necessarily great for boss DPS, but for ad control, tanky targets, and champions is pretty awesome. And if you're running GMs or dungeon encounters and things like that, there'll definitely be plenty of opportunity to take advantage of perks like this. We can see we're chewing through these Hydras in the new dungeon, but of course as a heavy it's also keeping that ad control potential. So something to look out for there. Another honourable mention really quick here would be the Retrofit Escapade. And this is a rapid fire frame void machine gun that actually seems to bug out with volatile rounds. So the footage here is using Gaia Falcons to proc volatile rounds. And when that's applied to a target, the explosions seem to increase damage by an unintended amount. Quite possibly it's something related to both the damage and the rate of fire of the weapon. But Retrofit Escapade may be something to play around with in that respect. And this is a seasoned machine gun earned through the activities in the Seraph frame. The next weapon we're going to touch on though is the Judgment of Kelgarath. This is an aggressive solar glaive. Drops from season activities and can be crafted once again. And for popular trait perks in the first column, things like Demolitionist, Overflow, Pugilist, and Genesis are available. Then in the second trait column, it can get Incandescent, so it's the only glaive in the game that can roll that bonus, but also Close to Melee, where glaive projectile final blows will improve glaive melee damage, and glaive projectile or melee damage will extend the duration. Plus it can roll Unstoppable Force and Surrounded. We've got a roll of it right here with Demolitionist and Incandescent, which is a bunch of fun. We should mention Incandescent only applies to the projectile part of the weapon, but paired with any of the top 4 first trait slot bonuses, it's without a doubt a pretty fun weapon. Although close to melee is also a good bonus for this, as it pretty much always provides some kind of damage bonus for the glaive. And so something else to look out for. And the next weapon we're going to talk about is actually one of the reprised Deepstone Crypt weapons. So we've got the Trustee, and this is the Solar Rapid Fire Frame Scout Rifle. We know that the weapon drops from DSC are pretty rare, including the red borders, which are quite hard to get. But Trustee has been updated with Incandescent, which I think is actually the best new bonus on the weapon. But in the first trade slot, it can also roll Reconstruction, as well as Surplus, Killing Wind, and Outlaw, plus now it can get Pugilist and Rapid Hit as potential first slot bonuses. Then in the second trade slot, High Impact Reserves, Redirection, Wellspring, and Opening Shot, but then there are the updates including Focus Fury and Incandescent as potential second slot bonuses. And I think especially another option for an Incandescent Scout Rifle is always welcome. Another interesting mention for DSC weapons though would be the Bequest Sword, and this is an arc adaptive frame sword. These weapons also retain all of the perks they used to be able to roll, but an interesting combination right here includes Chain Reaction, which seems to grant silly ability energy in return when paired with the origin trait for the weapon, which is Bray Inheritance, and dealing damage regenerates a small amount of ability energy. My buddy Duddits made a video on this weapon, and Chain Reaction pairing with Bray Inheritance actually returns a pretty silly amount of ability energy back. We can see with that grenade energy being fully dispensed there, wherever you've got a lot of enemies, 2 or 3 swipes of the sword, and these are just light attacks of course, are granting all of those abilities back through multi-kills. So I'm not sure if the weapon grants more ability energy back being a heavy, but it seems to work more potently with Chain Reaction than some other bonuses. Although anything that's getting multi-kills on these DSC weapons in particular will pair with that bonus really nicely, so something else to think about. And the very final weapon for today that we're going to touch on is the Disparity Pulse Rifle. So this is an aggressive burst stasis pulse. And if you are after a new version or a replacement of things like Blast Furnace from back in the day, this weapon is really solid for PvE and PvP. And in the first trade slot, it can roll things like Rapid Hit, Outlaw, Heating Up, and Moving Target as the top 4 popular bonuses. And then the second slot can roll Desperado, as well as Kill Clip, or Frenzy, and then it has options of Headstone and Headseeker as well. So purely in the archetype and the different perk potentials here, there's a lot of really good stuff. We can see Rapid Hit and Desperado is very popular, as are the other kind of reload and damage options like Outlaw and Kill Clip. It has those kind of classic pulse rifle bonuses. Additionally for PvE especially, Headstone is a good bonus, and it's not an option that we have on a lot of pulse rifles like this, so this is one of those not necessarily super flashy weapons, but a very sturdy and flexible weapon across all types of content. And again, with Disparity being a season weapon drop, it will drop from the season activities and can be focused via the Seraph frame for crafting and things like that. So it is a relatively accessible weapon. And so there we go guys, those are 10 of the top options for weapons this season. Once again, there'll be things that aren't on this list and perhaps you think should be, so let us know down in the comment section any weapons you've really been enjoying, as well as any top rolls you have on them. But otherwise, I hope the video has been useful today, and if it has, a rating below really does help us out on the channel. Plus, be sure to get subscribed if you want to be kept up to date with more Destiny content. But otherwise, as always, I appreciate you guys tuning in, and whatever you get up to, I hope you have an awesome day.